So there was an issue that I really have been thinking a lot about since becoming a monastic, actually before, since I started to go down that road and we came here, or decided to move here to train. And the issue came up during the discussion group that we had as part of our retreat on Memorial Day weekend. And I think it came up because people are really struggling with feeling connected with each other, given that there was all those restrictions on movement and social distancing as a result of the coronavirus. And so that issue is the one of intimacy. And intimacy is not a word you tend to hear a lot in Buddhism, at least not one that I've come across a lot. I think it's because of the connotations it carries for like romantic involvement or attachment. And so therefore I was really surprised to see, and very happily surprised to see a reference to it come up in the retreat last weekend, how to see yourself as you really are. So there was a section in there on how to cultivate love and compassion for beings, all beings. And then the quote says, let's see, over the course of innumerable lifetimes, all sentient beings have been your closest friends, sustaining you with kindness, which makes them intimates. In seeing that you have a responsibility to help them possess happiness and free them from suffering, develop great love and compassion. So I think many people are drawn to spiritual and religious practice because they want to cultivate within their hearts this feeling of intimacy with a higher power or higher purpose, or a group of practitioners, or even their own bodies and minds. And I know that I personally was attracted to Buddhism because it acknowledged what I felt was the most fundamental level of intimate experience that we have as human beings, which is that life is full of suffering and unsatisfactoriness. So I mentioned the discussion that we had during the retreat, and there were about over 50 people who were online through Zoom, and a lot of them shared that they were starting to really struggle with the loneliness and isolation of having to stay home for the past few months on end, more so than the previous discussion groups that we've had. And they also expressed profound gratitude for the connection that these discussion groups allowed them to have, and how nourished they felt interacting with people who shared similar spiritual values and beliefs. One person shared that she was having a lot of difficulty dealing with her strong emotions because she wasn't able to distract herself as she normally had been, going out, going here, going there. And her experience just reminded me of what goes on during the 3-month retreat at the Abbey, where we have to stay here, we're in silence, we can't just run to town, we can't strike up a conversation about kind of mundane things with each other, we can't just go online, look at whatever. We really have to stop and face our emotions. And so I shared that with her, like, yeah, this is really tough, but it's really beneficial. And she said, I'm really glad for this experience, because I know that this is the only way that I'm ever going to be able to look at these feelings and to work through them and to heal them. So I was really happy to hear that. And then this exchange got me thinking a lot again about intimacy and how so often we rely on our family and our friends, or even our work or other kinds of social engagements, to provide us with a feeling of connection, contribution, and belonging. This works pretty well in normal times. However, some disadvantages definitely become apparent, especially in times of social upheaval. If we rely on other people for our feeling of purpose and contentment, then we're definitely going to be disappointed, because everything changes. People and things change. They're subject to causes and conditions beyond our control. So eventually our expectations are not going to be met. And I think Buddhism provides some very good news on this front, because it says that our minds are the real source of happiness, and that we all have the ability to influence our minds in a really big way more than we could ever influence anybody else or other things outside of us. So after heading down the monastic path, I struggled with feeling a lack of close connections, at least the kinds I was used to. But I eventually realized that this craving for intimacy was nothing new, and it was mainly because I was really disconnected from my own body and mind. And I found that, in fact, the monastic life provides a great opportunity to become deeply in touch with our own minds, and also the minds of others who share their most personal struggles with us. I think it was Venerable Samten sent around an article a couple months ago. It was about a monk living at Gampo Abbey, and that's a Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Nova Scotia. And the article was about how are monastics, religious people, dealing with the shutdowns caused by the virus. Are they struggling? Are they feeling disconnected? And this monk had actually also lived at the Abbey for some time, and he was the one who introduced me to the Abbey. So I was really glad to read his words, and so I wanted to share them. And he said he had never felt isolated living in monastic community because it's almost like you're not alone, because you're constantly with yourself. I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing that right now, this boredom with oneself. It was a really powerful experience because I had to learn how to be friends with myself. I had to learn to love myself. I think that's one of the biggest things we do on the spiritual path. So that's definitely been my experience too. And I just wanted to share some of the practices that I've found very helpful in restoring that sense of connection with my body and my mind. And so for the body, it's been a lot of meditation on the breath and on the different parts of the body. I feel like this has been really helpful in grounding me and restoring a sense of stability and trust in my body. I find meditating on the different parts, taking them, deconstructing the body and laying them all out, I find it very relaxing. And I can feel the tension just, flow out of my muscles as I do that, as I release my identification with these different parts. And I was really surprised at that, but I think it's a lovely meditation. And then doing prostrations, walking outside in the forest, doing yoga, those have been also very helpful in getting kind of blocked energy out of my body. I can actually feel parts of my body that I really couldn't feel when I walked through the doors here. So becoming intimate with my mind has been more challenging because of all the awful things that are in there that I really wish weren't, and I've been trying to spend my whole life running away from. So self-empathy and self-compassion practices have been really crucial to avoid this knee-jerk reaction to just go in another direction, to do anything to distract from those thoughts and feelings. Purification practices have helped me to face some of my most embarrassing and harmful behaviors, because as we do that practice, we stop identifying with them, and then we create that distance, and then we inspire ourselves, give ourselves courage that we can do something different in the future. And learning how to observe the arising and disappearance of thoughts and emotions from a neutral perspective has been helpful in, again, creating distance between myself and my afflictions. And the thought training techniques that actually help us to see the afflictions as friends that are kind of reminding us, hey, you need to look at this. You really need to see what's going on and come to understand your mind and cultivate something more positive in its place. So there have been practices to help me become more intimate with strangers, people I don't know, like who come to visit the Abbey or even I hear about on the news. And that's meditating on the kindness of others, how we've all been related to each other in previous lives, and how we all experience the same kinds of sufferings and hopes as living beings. And then on the interpersonal level, learning empathy and deep listening through NVC, or nonviolent communication, has also been very good for restoring that sense of trust and connection between people who live here. And then reflecting many times throughout the day on interdependence and how we're all connected on the smallest to the largest levels has really helped me feel, like I'm a part of this universe. I've even increased my intimacy with physical objects by practicing mindfulness and staying present and slowing down a little bit as I go about my daily activities. It's really, you can be quite tender with objects, and it's very sweet. So my conclusion is that intimacy it's a way of being in the world, of living in harmony with your environment, So it's not based on having just a few close relationships with special people, but it's a way that we can learn to approach all beings, and especially how we approach ourselves and our own experiences. Intimacy is made up of things like love, acceptance, humility, and forgiveness. And this attitude, or this way of relating to the world around us, I think is what we're all most desperate for during this time of social unrest and uncertainty. I think the ultimate experience of intimacy would be realizing the true nature of reality, emptiness or selflessness, when all barriers between self and others melt away. Realizing emptiness is often described as water poured into water, and it's hard to imagine a more beautiful description of intimacy. Still, intimacy can be scary at times, when we get close to things we really wish weren't there. But as the participant in the discussion group had expressed, only by facing the truth of our experience can we hope to find a way out. And I think that the best tool that will enable this to happen is to cultivate compassion for ourselves and for others. So may we continue to grow our compassion and intimacy for all beings, and through that intimacy, lead each one of them permanently out of suffering.